Good morning, everyone, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the committee, I would like to extend my warmest welcome to all the participants and also moderator and also speakers that have spared their time to join today's webinar under the theme New Literacy Studies, Time for Global Turn in Digital Literacies Research. So this is the fifth time already the literacy talk has been conducted by Kajian Literasi Baru. And I'm glad because today I am chosen as your host. My name is Sri Sumaryani. You may call me Yani, and I'm from Universitas Negeri Semarang. Before we go any further with the discussion, I'd like to read several rules regarding how to participate in today's webinar. There are 5 of them. I'd like to read them one by one. The first one is please rename your Zoom username following the format that has been set by the committee. Jadi sudah ada format yang harus diikuti ya Bapak dan Ibu untuk username-nya. The format is name underscore institution. Jadi nama Bapak dan Ibu, sebagai contoh Sri Sumaryani, kemudian underscore-nya nanti institusinya, Universitas Negeri Semarang misalnya. Number 2, please mute your microphone later on while the speakers are presenting their presentation, while they are delivering their presentation. And you may unmute your microphone while or when the question and answer session is carried out. Jadi itu tadi instruksinya. Silahkan mematikan mikrofon saat sesi pemaparan berlangsung dan bisa untuk menyalakan mikrofon kembali ketika sudah ada di sesi tanya jawab. Third one, please use the chat box or raise hand features if you have any questions to the committee regarding the conduction of today's webinar. So for instance, if you have problems or you think you want to ask an immediate question. Jadi nanti bisa menggunakan feature chat box yang ada di bawah maupun raise hand ya Bapak dan Ibu sekalian. Kemudian yang keempat adalah please do not share today's link to others ya karena it's hanya untuk kalangan terbatas ya. So please do not share today's webinar link to other people who haven't registered to this event. And then the fifth one is for the question and answer session later, please use English if you have questions addressed to Dr. Jane Lammers. But don't be worried if you have questions in Bahasa Indonesia. There is a person in charge from the committee that would be more than ready to translate your questions in Bahasa Indonesia to English. Jadi untuk pertanyaan nanti khusus untuk Dr. Lammers bisa menggunakan bahasa Inggris, tapi kalaupun pertanyaannya disampaikan dalam bahasa Indonesia, nanti akan ada dari komite, dari panitia yang akan mengalihbahasakan ke dalam bahasa Inggris ya, jadi jangan khawatir. And remember that we're going to choose 3 best questions from 3 participants, and there would be door prizes for those 3 persons. So make sure that you do not leave the meeting until the end of this meeting, yeah? All right. Remember that during the presentation, there will be the translated version in the chat box. Jadi untuk nanti pemaparan dalam bahasa Inggris akan ada pengalihbahasaan dalam bahasa Indonesia yang bisa Bapak dan Ibu simak di bagian chat box-nya. Begitu ya Bapak dan Ibu sekalian. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, it seems like all of our speakers have already are in this room, yeah. So I'd like to say hi to first Dr. Puji Astuti, and then also
Halo Bu
Dr.
Yani.
Halo Ibu, and then also Dr. Jane Lemmers. Hi
Good
Dr.
morning, selamat
Lemmers.
pagi.
Selamat pagi, and then also Dr. Zulfa Sakia.
Selamat pagi, selamat malam, Jane.
All right. And we also have a moderator because the success of a discussion means nothing, yeah, without, you know, the presence of a moderator. That's why I would like to greet today's moderator, Dr. Tati Dewardi. How are you, Ibu? Good morning.
Very good. I'm intimidated now since you said that.
Don't be, please. Yeah, so I'm going to use this time to introduce Dr. Tati Dewardi's short resume. So this is the resume that I was talking about. I hope that all of you could access this on your screen. All right, so Dr. Tati Dewardi is currently teaching at Fakultas Tarbiyah dan Keguruan UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta, and she's also an affiliated researcher to Jakarta-based SMRC. SMRC is Saiful Mujani Research and Consulting. Correct me if I'm wrong, Doctor. Right, and she got her MA in Teacher College from Columbia University and her PhD in Education from the Ohio State University. Dr. Tati Dewardi's research interests cover several fields, such as literacy education and international education, specifically digital and media literacy, literature-based literacy education, and also children's literature. Well, without any further ado, I'd like to hand over my microphone to Dr. Tati. So, Dr. Tati, the time is completely yours now.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mbak. Aduh, saya lupa tadi. Mbak Sri Sumaryani.
Yeah.
Sorry. Good morning, Ibu Bapak semua. Thank you for joining in. This is the 5th time we are meeting in this forum. Very nice one. We are very excited with the topic, of course, and the speakers. We have the stellar speakers here. I couldn't, be more excited today because I've been trying to read their work, but then I gave up because there are plenty. So, our discussion today revolve around digital literacy, but also we are, in keeping with our a group that is concerned with new literacy studies, other aspect of digital literacy and critical aspect of literacy will be covered. So the speakers here will be discussing about their research, and then also the forum is, we always encourage the forum to discuss about the latest research, the cutting edge of research in literacy research. But also we always keeping in mind that it needs to be something more practical, and then something that we can take away from the discussion, and then perhaps applicable in classroom research or daily practices as educators. So we have these two goals, in our discussion. Hopefully we can cover that. So we have 3 speakers. The first one, we have Dr. Pujiastuti, PhD. Okay, I'm gonna read her. So I need to show her slide. Do I need to show the slide, or the host would do that for us? I have the copy as well, but for the first speaker.
Okay, Bu Tati, the latest slide is still with me. I haven't shared it with you. So
no, I mean your CV. Sorry, your bio. Because the Larissa has already prepared a very beautiful slide about your bio. I just want to make sure.
I see.
Do that.
Okay.
Is it me or Larissa would do that? Okay. Yeah, I have it here. Here's what I'm talking about, Bu Puji. Bu Puji Astuti PhD will be our first speaker. She is an associate professor of language and arts at University of Negeri Semarang, or UNNES. Bu Puji educational backgrounds. She got her BA from UNNES, an MA in English Education from the UPI, Bandung, and her PhD from the University of Researchers. Her research interests revolves around digital literacy, teaching and learning, and many more. I think many more interesting things she would research in the future. Bu Puji, we have been communicating last night, and she's been working on her slide, so I'm sure she would share the slide with us today. Bu Puji, are you ready to share your slide?
Yeah.
By the way, Bu Puji and Bu Jane Lammers have been co-authoring articles and chapters, I believe. They have done a number of excellent research, and more recently been published in a top-notch journal. It's a journal, Literacy and Adolescent, I believe. Maybe I skipped one of the words. Yeah.
Excuse me, Bu Tati. Would you please stop sharing the screen? Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Are you a host right now?
Yeah, I think so.
You are? Okay.
Yeah. Can everyone see my slide?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Clear. Thank you.
Okay, shall I start, Bu Tati?
The time is yours, Bu Puji, because we would like to hear more about your presentation rather than me talking.
Okay, thank you. All right, nama saya Puji, Ibu Bapak. Selamat pagi semua. I'm gonna use both English and Indonesian in my presentation. Salam hormat untuk Bapak Ibu peneliti di Kajian Literasi Baru, Bu Sofi, Bu Tiwi, Bu Tati, Bu Zulfa, Bu Sari, Pak Irfan atau Mas Irfan ya, dan Pak Firman. Salam kenal juga untuk Bu Larissa. Thank you for having me. Saya akan memulai presentasi saya dengan menampilkan satu kalimat dari artikel hasil publikasi Jane dan I tentang praktik literasi digital siswa SMP dan SMA. Kami mengajak semua untuk bergabung dengan kami, pendidik, peneliti, dan pembelajar dari seluruh penjuru dunia untuk belajar dari satu sama lain melalui dialog dan terus menjalin serta mempererat koneksi global, khususnya dalam upaya membantu para pembelajar menjadi cross-cultural global meaning makers, pencipta makna global lintas budaya melalui literasi digital. Mungkin Ibu Bapak mengalami apa yang saya alami atau mungkin tidak mengalaminya. Tidak mudah dalam keseharian saya untuk memiliki waktu untuk berefleksi dalam rangka menghimpun arti dan mencipta makna. For constructing my identities as an educator, as an academic, and as a researcher. Oleh karena itu, saya akan menggunakan kesempatan pagi ini untuk berefleksi, being self-reflexive, karena saya meminjam istilah Freire, I am an eternal seeker, I am an unfinished being, so I'm doing reflection to feel alive. Dan disclaimer-nya, Ibu Bapak, I am a newbie dalam kajian dan penelitian literasi baru. Saya akan memulai dengan setting the stage. Ada beberapa tema-tema dalam diri saya, dan terlihat di sini ada active learning, specifically cooperative learning, EFL teacher education, new literacies, digital literacies, and global meaning making. Saya melihat mereka semua, topik-topik ini, direkatkan oleh satu, yaitu identity construction. Saya belajar tentang identity construction di program PhD saya, di satu mata kuliah pilihan namanya Development of Selves in Socio-Cultural Contexts, Understanding Selfhood in relation to the socio-cultural context of development. Saya akan jelaskan tema-tema ini satu persatu dengan singkat. Penelitian dan publikasi saya mostly on active learning, specifically cooperative learning. Lalu bagaimana kaitannya dengan pembelajaran, bagaimana kaitan pembelajaran dengan identity construction? Saya melihat pembelajaran kooperatif mengakomodasi konstruksi identitas. Identitas apa? Identitas pembelajaran, terutama melalui prinsip utamanya yaitu akuntabilitas individu. Dengan prinsip ini, kata ajar mewujud dalam kegiatan pembelajaran. Dan dengan prinsip ini, kita melihat bahwa untuk menjadi pembelajar seutuhnya, kita perlu belajar dulu untuk bekal berpartisipasi atau bekal mengajar pembelajar lain. Untuk menjadi pembelajar seutuhnya, kita perlu pembelajar yang lain. Untuk membantu kita belajar, mereka membantu kita belajar, dan juga mereka kita bantu belajar. Saya mengajar di Prodi Pendidikan Bahasa Inggris di UNNES, di FL Teacher Education. Jadi salah satu pekerjaan saya adalah bersama-sama dengan teman-teman di Prodi mengonstruksi identitas calon guru dan guru. Along the way, I gain an understanding that identity and practice are interconnected. Dan betapa konstruksi identitas itu proses yang kompleks. Yang berarti juga bahwa konstruksi identitas itu merupakan kerja kolektif. Salah satu kenyataan yang biasanya saya temui di lapangan terkait penerapan pembelajaran aktif oleh calon guru maupun guru in service adalah bahwa di kampus telah dibekali dengan metode-metode di bawah payung active learning pedagogy, tapi begitu di sekolah lain lagi ceritanya. Jadi gap itu ada dan nyata, dan saya belajar bahwa agar gap itu berkurang atau mengecil gitu ya, diperlukan agensi atau kapasitas yang dimiliki seseorang untuk membentuk identitas yang ingin ia raih. Materi agensi ini saya lihat masih absen ya, atau masih belum terintegrasi di kurikulum pendidikan guru. Kita ke New Literacy, Ibu Bapak. Di program Ph.D, saya belajar tentang New Literacy di mata kuliah yang bernama Literacy Learning as a Social Practice. Dan dari nama mata kuliah ini tercermin atau terlihat bahwa New Literacy juga berperan dalam konstruksi identitas guru. New Literacy dapat membantu kita memahami bagaimana konstruksi identitas calon guru di masa lalu. Saat saya menempuh program S1, berjalan dengan proses yang sangat bergantung pada written text. Jadi waktu itu saya harus sering memantau papan pengumuman di jendela kaca ruang dosen gitu ya, agar dapat selalu melihat informasi terbaru dan tidak ketinggalan. Dan waktu itu kami tidak memiliki akses untuk belajar dari performa mengajar para guru dan dosen. Dan bagaimana konstruksi identitas waktu di masa lalu itu less social. Bukan berarti bahwa kami mahasiswa calon guru itu tidak ngumpul, tidak berinteraksi, tidak berbicara satu sama lain. We did that a lot. Tapi interaksi yang terstruktur, yang penuh dengan balikan bermakna dari para dosen, dari pendidik calon guru, hampir tidak kami dapatkan waktu itu. Berbeda dengan sekarang, mahasiswa punya akses untuk belajar dari performa mengajar rekan sejawatnya. Dari guru-guru in service, bahkan mahasiswa dapat mengakses performa mengajar dosen-dosennya online ya, tersedia di YouTube contohnya. Konstruksi identitas calon guru saat ini juga makin sosial dengan bantuan media sosial. Media sosial ini digunakan baik untuk berdialog atau berdiskusi dengan rekan sejawat maupun berdiskusi dengan dosen dan juga guru pamong. Yang perlu ada saya pikir, dan mestinya terus ada dari waktu ke waktu dalam pendidikan guru adalah the agency of all the involved parties in constructing their identities. Nah, Ibu Bapak, saya belajar tentang digital literacy directly from my guru, Jane, through our collaboration, joint research, publication, our chats, our trips together, including our trips to Jepara. Dan terkait terkait identity construction, sangat kentara bagaimana digital literacy dapat memediasi konstruksi identitas calon guru dan para guru. Literasi digital berperan untuk melakukan, mendapatkan atau memproduksi makna, melihat keterkaitan, dan juga untuk berpikir, serta menunjukkan identitas yang tengah dibangun. Contoh kecilnya, mahasiswa PPL, mahasiswa calon guru posting di sosial media menggunakan baju seragam PPL gitu ya. Itu peran media sosial untuk menunjukkan diri, menunjukkan identitas yang tengah dibangun. Jadi sekali lagi saya belajar bagaimana literasi digital berperan dalam konstruksi identitas calon guru, dan peran tersebut nyata dan kasat mata. Okay, Jane also introduced me to Tierney's global meaning making, tentang bagaimana new literacies dan digital literacies dapat mempersiapkan, membantu, dan membentuk anak-anak muda menjadi agentic global meaning makers, pencipta makna global yang beragensi. Dengan beberapa laku berikut ini, seperti yang terlihat di slide, sebagai penciri seorang global meaning maker. Ia menghormati kelokalan sekaligus mengupayakan timbal balik antara yang lokal dan yang global. Ia memperoleh atau mencipta makna dengan bantuan makna yang dimiliki orang lain, bahkan dalam prosesnya terjadi penyatuan makna. Seorang global meaning maker juga terlibat secara aktif, kritis, lintas batas, dan praktik-praktik literasinya mengusung kerjasama dan kolaborasi. Tidak menegasi perbedaan dan saling menghormati dan timbal balik. Dan Ibu Bapak, saya akan menggunakan perspektif global meaning making ini dalam mengonstruksi makna selama presentasi saya ini. Oke, ini bulan April ya Ibu Bapak, bulannya Ibu kita, Ibu Kartini, dan menurut saya Kartini itu seorang global meaning maker. Jane is also a global meaning maker. What about me? Well, I am trying my best to follow in their footsteps. Saya mencoba mengikuti langkah-langkah Kartini dan juga Jane sebagai global meaning maker. Saya akan menggunakan kutipan dari dua sumber ini, Ibu Bapak, untuk mendukung konstruksi makna dalam presentasi ini. Pertama, Letters of Japanese Princess, kumpulan surat-surat Kartini, dan Educate the Japanese, a memorial address to the Dutch government written by Kartini. So I am done with the setup of my stage. Dan dengan tema-tema tadi, ini judul presentasi saya, Literacy Practices of a Japanese Global Meaning Maker, R.A. Kartini, Lessons for the Teaching and Learning of New Literacies in EFL Teacher Education. Bapak Ibu, dengan sengaja saya menggunakan kata Japanese dan singkatan RA atau Raden Ajeng, Raden Ayu dalam judul presentasi saya sebagai pengingat bahwa memang Kartini memiliki modal sosial dan modal kultural yang menjadikannya who she was and who she became. Modal sosial dan kultural Kartini tentunya tidak dimiliki kebanyakan perempuan Jawa waktu itu. Dan dengan modal tersebut, Kartini dapat berinteraksi dengan buku-buku berbahasa Belanda dan juga bersosialisasi dengan kaum terdidik Belanda, dan dalam prosesnya she developed her habitus. Dengan sendirinya, praktik-praktik literasi Kartini menunjukkan habitusnya. Mungkin Ibu Bapak ada pertanyaan, apakah seseorang yang tidak memiliki social and cultural capital seperti Kartini dapat menjadi global meaning maker? Jawabannya bisa. Saya tengah membaca buku tentang itu. Ini mudah-mudahan terlihat. I will always write back, itu seseorang yang background-nya sangat berbeda dengan Kartini, tapi dia bisa menjadi global meaning maker, dan lain waktu kita bisa mendiskusikannya. Ibu Bapak, mari kita lihat praktik-praktik literasi Kartini sebagai seorang global meaning maker. A little bit of my presentation, I'm doing presentation management. Ibu Bapak, ketika saya menampilkan slide dan saya pause, berhenti sebentar gitu ya, itu artinya saya mempersilakan Ibu Bapak untuk membaca quote yang ada di slide. Saya juga akan menggunakan kata dia atau ia ya, bukan beliau untuk merujuk Kartini, karena saya sedang memposisikan Kartini sebagai teman saya, teman seperjuangan, teman sepemikiran, dan teman panutan. Kartini sangat menghormati akar budayanya, seperti terlihat di sini. Ia khawatir siapa yang kelak akan menguri-uri atau meneruskan seni ukir Jepara ketika suatu hari dia harus pergi selamanya gitu ya. Ia juga peduli pada gamelan, pada batik, dan juga karya sastra Jawa. Meski demikian, menurut saya kecintaan Kartini pada budayanya, budaya Jawa itu tergolong tough love gitu ya, karena dia juga menulis komentar-komentar yang lumayan pedas tentang Japanese aristocracy. Kartini mendekolonisasi ruang privat, ruang pikir individu, ruang publik, ruang budaya, dan ia ingin membangun timbal balik antara yang lokal dan yang global, antara Jawa dan Belanda. Kartini menyatakan bahwa penting bagi Belanda untuk mempelajari Jawa, dan Jawa mempelajari Belanda. Tujuannya agar tercipta mutual respect and trust. And she was definitely doing the reimagining work. Kartini mempelajari bahasa Belanda secara formal di sekolah, dan setelah dia tidak sekolah lagi, dia terus mempelajari bahasa Belanda dengan melakukan, yaitu dengan membaca, menulis, berpikir dengan bahasa tersebut. Dan Kartini bercerita bahwa proses mempelajari bahasa Belanda ini tidak mudah. Seperti di sini terlihat betapa ada keengganan dari orang Belanda untuk menggunakan Dutch, menggunakan bahasa Belanda dengan Kartini. Meski mereka tahu bahwa Kartini bisa berbicara bahasa Belanda, bisa menulis dalam bahasa Belanda. Tetapi ia tetap beragensi. She got the strive and capacity to keep on learning the language. Karena ia tahu bahwa bahasa Belanda adalah jalan menuju pendidikan, jalan menuju pengetahuan, pencerahan, konstruksi identitas, dan alat untuk aktivisme. Selanjutnya membaca. Kartini membaca dan sangat mempercayai kekuatan membaca. Kekuatan membaca untuk dapat belajar secara mandiri dan juga untuk reading between the lines. Menurut Tierney, seorang global meaning maker itu memiliki agensi dalam proses konstruksi makna saat membaca. Dan salah satu praktiknya adalah dengan banyak bertanya, terutama pada diri sendiri saat membaca. Praktik literasi berikutnya adalah using writing and technology for meaning making. Bahkan bukan melalui email atau social media platform, karena belum ada waktu itu ya, Ibu Bapak. Kartini menggunakan teknologi pada masanya, yaitu dengan mengirim surat melalui pos untuk berkorespondensi dengan sahabat-sahabat penanya di Belanda. Di salah satu suratnya, Kartini bercerita bahwa berkorespondensi itu adalah salah satu praktik literasi di keluarganya. Jadi bukan hal aneh atau barang yang bukan kegiatan yang langka di keluarganya. Tapi Kartini sendiri juga paham betul bahwa berkorespondensi dapat memperkaya dan memperluas cakrawala untuk kedua belah pihak. Karena ada kolaborasi konstruksi makna di sana. Interrupting existing frame, interrogating the systems at work. Ini juga merupakan praktik literasi Kartini. Ia menginterupsi dan menginterogasi paternalisme. Ia bertanya bagaimana bisa perempuan mendidik anak-anaknya jika mereka tidak berpendidikan. Ia juga menyatakan jikalau ia tak sampai pada titik di mana perempuan memiliki kebebasan dan kemerdekaan, ia akan tetap bahagia di alam sana karena ia telah membangun jalan menuju kebebasan dan kemerdekaan perempuan. Kartini juga mengkonsep ulang dan ingin mentransformasi bagaimana pendidikan seharusnya berlangsung. Menurut Kartini, pendidikan harus mengakomodasi multilingualism, membangun kecintaan siswa pada karya sastra, dan siswa belajar dari guru yang menikmati membaca. Ia juga menegaskan bahwa dalam pendidikan harus berlangsung pembelajaran yang memfasilitasi pertukaran ide antar siswa melalui debat dan diskusi. Menurut Tierney, seorang global meaning maker itu adalah aktivis sekaligus actionist. Di memorialnya, Kartini menulis pandangan-pandangannya tentang kondisi masyarakat Jawa pada waktu itu, termasuk penegasan tentang pendidikan untuk perempuan. Dan ia merealisasikannya dengan mendirikan sekolah di Jepara dan Rembang untuk anak-anak desa. Jadi Kartini tidak sekedar berpikir, menulis, dan mengonstruksi makna, ia juga melakukan. Dia melakukan kegiatan nyata. Yang terakhir, Kartini melakukan konstruksi identitas pertama-tama untuk identitasnya sendiri, yaitu ingin menjadi a woman of freedom, a woman of independence, an educator, dan ia juga mengonstruksi identitas perempuan-perempuan di masa depan, generasi setelahnya, yaitu perempuan yang berpendidikan dan yang merdeka. So she was doing a collective becoming. Ibu Bapak, saya tampilkan lagi Kartini's Literacy Practices as a Global Meaning Maker. Ini daftarnya, menurut saya ini ngeri-ngeri sedap ya. Mungkin Ibu Bapak bisa ikut berefleksi dengan saya. Apakah kita semua sudah melakukan apa yang Kartini lakukan? Apakah kita sudah melakukan apa yang dilakukan oleh seorang global meaning maker? Karena kita juga ingin siswa-siswa kita menjadi global meaning maker. Jadi kita sendiri juga harus menjadi global meaning maker. Taken together, Kartini was a global meaning maker, and the direction of her literacy practices was towards humanizing humanity. Oleh karenanya, mari kita bawa ini semua ke ranah pendidikan guru, khususnya pendidikan guru bahasa Inggris, my academic home, agar pendidikan yang berlangsung di sana juga humanizing. Berikut ini pelajaran atau makna yang saya peroleh dengan berefleksi dari refleksi saya hari ini tentang praktik-praktik literasi Kartini. Makna yang menurut saya perlu mewujud dalam pengajaran dan pembelajaran literasi baru di pendidikan guru bahasa Inggris di kurikulum guru pendidikan guru bahasa Inggris. Pertama, kita perlu melihat apa yang dibawa oleh mahasiswa ke kelas kita. The funds of knowledge, their funds of knowledge, pengetahuan, keahlian, pengalaman yang mahasiswa peroleh dari keseharian mereka. Dan tugas kita sebagai teacher educator adalah membantu mahasiswa untuk menggunakan their funds of knowledge dalam pembelajaran to propel their learning, agar berlangsung pembelajaran yang efektif. Yang kedua, promoting international classroom exchanges, connectedness, and cosmopolitanism. Cosmopolitanism is a sense of global citizenship. Untuk yang ini saya pikir prodi saya sudah melakukannya melalui program kredit transfer. Ada satu kelas yang saya ampu itu mahasiswanya terdiri dari berasal dari berbagai universitas, bahkan dari 2 negara. Ada UNNES, ada Universitas Negeri Malang, dan University Sabah Malaysia. Mereka berkumpul di mata kuliah kurikulum yang proyeknya itu menulis RPP dan materi pembelajaran. Saya percaya di kelas itu mahasiswa melihat perbedaan sekaligus keterkaitan. Mereka merasakan dan menyaksikannya. Sebagai contoh, 2 negara ini, Indonesia Malaysia, menggunakan format lesson plan yang berbeda, dan pemilihan kata juga berbeda. Untuk kata siswa, Indonesia menggunakan students, dan Malaysia menggunakan kata pupils. Tapi itu semua tentunya bermuara sama, yaitu mempersiapkan pembelajaran yang efektif. Dan mahasiswa di kelas tersebut merasakan bahwa mereka itu bersama-sama dengan warga dunia, dengan warga Malaysia, constructing their teacher identity. Ketiga, Ibu Bapak, perlunya pemberian contoh pada mahasiswa calon guru tentang penggunaan teknologi dalam pembelajaran. Kalau kita mengidamkan mahasiswa dapat memanfaatkan YouTube dalam pengajarannya, maka sebagai pendidik calon guru, in the first place, kita adalah pengguna YouTube dalam pengajaran. Itu contoh sederhananya. Kemudian keempat, di prodi mereka, program pendidikan guru, mahasiswa belajar tentang, melalui, dan dengan teknologi. Mahasiswa belajar tentang teknologi, melalui teknologi, dan dengan teknologi. Tujuannya adalah mereka menguasai technical stuff and also the ethos of new literacies. Sekaligus mereka merasakan bagaimana peran teknologi dalam konstruksi identitas mereka. Selanjutnya, penggunaan dialog dalam proses pendidikan guru untuk mengonstruksi dan memediasi pemaknaan dan pemahaman. Termasuk di dalamnya yang menurut saya penting adalah dialog tentang isu-isu social justice dan hubungannya dengan pendidikan. Dan saya melihat PPG tahun ini mulai menggunakan dialog melalui problem based learning. Ada sesi dialog antara dosen PPG dan mahasiswa untuk mengidentifikasi masalah dalam pembelajaran dan pengajaran, dan dari sana kemudian mereka baru mulai mengembangkan perangkat. Jadi they identify the problems first, and then afterwards, based on the problem identification, they start developing the instructional documents. Yang terakhir, pendidik guru adalah mereka yang memiliki gairah membaca, gairah menulis yang tinggi. Jadi mereka punya gairah membaca dan menulis yang tinggi sehingga kemudian mereka bisa menularkannya ke para siswa. Kalau di sini ada ibu bapak kajur atau kaprodi dan tengah bingung ya, memilih satu dari dua dosen untuk mengajar mata kuliah literasi, dan dua dosen itu sama-sama memiliki pengetahuan yang sangat baik tentang literasi, saran saya adalah ibu bapak memilih satu yang gairah membaca dan menulisnya lebih tinggi. Itulah dosen literasi. Terakhir, thank you everyone for listening to my reflection, my thought experiment, and my thinking aloud. Thank you. Terima kasih. Back to Bu Tati.
Thank you, Bu Pujiastuti, Dr. Pujiastuti. There are a couple of things while I'm, enjoying your presentation that gave me a perspective about Kartini. Kartini as a figure, national figure, sometimes seems obscure for younger generation. Even me, I'm not young anymore, but I feel like the narration is a bit more domesticated, and then sometimes even disregard as something like a myth that is not possible that women at that time would write such things. So a lot of things that's still going on, even though she is a national figure. And your analysis gave us a new perspective, very perspective that is very timely. First one is in April. The second one, we are now very much into literacy. So giving this perspective would contribute so much to our discussion, and just to give our new understanding about how deep and how beyond the time Kartini as a figure, at that time, it's beyond the time. The second one, maybe from my personal take on your presentation, I really like your practical recommendation about your research. I think it's very useful for us, personally for me. And then the last thing, I think that I can relate to your presentation, to be a literacy teacher, literacy scholars, that person has to like reading. Yes, indeed, my research also look at that to be a good literacy teacher, that person has to be a good reader and also knows how to do with that reading. I think with that, I would like to continue our presentation or discussion today. Bu Puji, terima kasih ya. We'll have more discussion perhaps after all the presenters have completed their presentation. So the second presenter, I'm gonna show you the bio. Yeah, here is the bio. She's been Dr. Jane Lammers. Yeah, Dr. Jane Lammers, PhD. She's been very active in our chat room. We were like so excited to see her excited. Dr. Jane Lammers is an associate professor of education. She's also director of secondary English teacher preparation at the University of Rochester. A beautiful and very prominent university. She got her educational background, got a Bachelor of Science in Liberal Studies, University of Central Florida, and Master of Education, the University of Central Florida as well, and her PhD in Curriculum Instruction from the Arizona State University. You know, we've been talking this morning that she worked under the supervision of Dr. James G. Yeah, the famous one. Her research interests concern with digital literacy, education, digital literacy, education literacy, and so many more. If you want to Google her work, it's plenty. You know, I gave up reading because of so many and wonderful. One of my favorite one, of course, the one that been co-author with Bu Puji Astuti. But also I like to I enjoy reading her chapter in reading research and reading research.
The Handbook of Reading
Yeah,
Research?
the Handbook of Doing Research. I've been reading that. That's really wonderful. I haven't finished because I would like to digest more. But anyway, this is just time to present. So the time is yours, Dr. Jane Lammers. So I'm gonna stop my slide.
Terima kasih. Selamat pagi, teman-teman. I'm very grateful for the invitation. I'm grateful for Bu Sophie, Bu Tati, Bu Zulfa, who first asked me a while back. I'm grateful for all of the friends. I tried to say hi to everybody whose name I recognized in the chat. And any opportunity that I get to come together with my guru, Bu Puji, and to learn from her and to share the work that we've been doing is a blessing for me. It's even worth staying up past dark here in the US, which is where I am. So I come to you tonight, or this morning where you are, wanting to talk about the global turn in digital literacy research that my own personal work has taken. Much like Bu Puji, I'll share a personal journey in a way, but unlike Bu Puji, my Bahasa Indonesia is very rusty, and so I will speak in Bahasa Inggris, and I will try to go slow enough so that it can be translated. I also note here on my introduction slide, I spend time and I wait on this slide often for two reasons. Number one, because I really do want to connect with you all. So I want you to have the opportunity to see how to connect with me on Twitter or on Instagram, whatever works best for you. I learned while in Indonesia that Instagram is probably better. I also want to make very clear that though I'm the speaker here for speaker number 2, this is collaborative research with my partner Puji. So everything that I'm sharing is something that we did with the gracious support not only of Fulbright and Aminef, but also our colleagues and supporters at UNNES, who made Puji available to me so that we could do the research together, who supported the work, and who hopefully I will be able to return to and visit again. So Puji already introduced you to our research and our first article that has come from this research. She shared with you one of her favorite sentences, which is at the end, and I share with you one of the motivations for the work that I've been doing in these past couple of years, which is this understanding that when digital literacies or new literacies, for example, when that research centers only Western perspectives, it limits the kinds of claims that we can make and the ways in which we can support teachers. And I do this work with a global perspective now as a matter of justice and as a matter of not because I have outsider perspectives that are better than. No, instead, I want to decenter and decentralize these perspectives that have been dominant, colonizing, and infiltrating. And instead, I respond to the call from a dear colleague of mine who works in Colombia, Dr. Raul Mora, who in a recent commentary shared the importance that for those of us who study literacy, we need to pay attention to our own complicity in the marginalization of the ways of thinking, the epistemologies, the ways of understanding knowledge from the global South, and what implication that has for schooling and higher education contexts. And so I am no longer willing, though I appreciate the work of James Paul Gee, as Butati mentioned, he was one of my mentors. I no longer think that the very influential work that he was a part of needs to be at the center. Rather, I want that work to be in conversation. And so I've taken to, as Pooji already introduced, conceptualizing new literacies more within a global meaning-making framework. And this has been the most recent evolution of my research and my thinking. So as Pooji indicated, global meaning makers are agentic, right? Tierney tells us that they come together with this license, meaning they not only can, but they have the right to. That's what I think of when he talks about license, that they have the right to make meanings that are informed by, infused with the meanings of others. So even in these fun icons that you see here, you see these girls not only making their own meaning, but with their devices and things, making meanings with others. And I did a quick change of this slide while Pooji was talking, and she was talking about Kartini as agentic, and the ways in which Kartini advocated for the need to uplift the women so that we could uplift the society. And part of that was through education. And so I replaced the image that I had here with this fun kind of global meaning making perspective that fuses our two cultures. If you are familiar with the Rosie the Riveter image, right, from World War II, when the US was trying to encourage women to come into factories and do the work, and mainly because all of the men were fighting the war, right? But here's kind of a Muslim cartoon version of it. And so we see that we're not talking about passive, receptive, asocial understandings of literacy, right? It's not restrictive or repressive. No, what we're talking about is much more active. These collectives, critical, where we get to cross borders, we get to step over lines. And here's where I am so interested in conversation with all of you in Indonesia, because I know that stepping over lines may be problematic, right? Because there are protocols, there are cultural understandings, there's kind of a collectivist notion of making sure that we save face, we have deference. So I'm interested in what a global meaning maker can look like in Indonesia. But I think it is possible, as Puji just showed us, not only for herself, but also for the very influential Kartini. And I too love this same picture of the two of us with Kartini. I use this picture often, and I use a picture of myself in front of this same poster as I introduce myself to my students now here in Rochester, because it so beautifully illustrates to me that it means a complex negotiation. And I very much embody this commitment, and I hope that Puji would attest to this, that when I was in Indonesia and had the opportunity to be there and doing the research, that though I brought ethical perspectives from the US, especially as it related to research and the design of research that were maybe different, I came to our work together not with preset or standardized ways of thinking about what literacy could be or should be, but I like to think of our rides in grab cars as when we would do a lot of our complex negotiations, right? We would sit in the back of the car, stuck in traffic, going, to our research sites, or going to another presentation, or taking the few hours to drive to Japava. And I would bring to her all of the things that I had questions about. Why this? Why is this happening? What's happening here? What's the motivation? There must be a reason. Help me understand. Everything from Friday morning exercises out front of the faculty building to just different practices we saw in school, to the ways in which people needed to welcome each other, the use of language in different way. And we pursue in our research together this reciprocity, this way of honoring the local, respecting it, and bringing it into conversation with the global for a sort of eclecticism. So we conducted research together, and we started with students' perspectives. This was part of what was very important for me and my understanding of new literacies. And I cite here some of the new literacy scholars who have influenced my work. And these scholars, when Puji was explaining about new ethos and new technical stuff, that comes from Michelle Noble and Colin Lancashire and others. And these scholars argue that we need to pay attention to what's happening in these kind of spaces. And these spaces are now so ubiquitous, I don't even have to tell you what any of these symbols mean. I see Butati, she knows exactly what I'm talking about, right? And so we want to pay attention to what's happening there and learn about it and theorize it so that we can inform what might happen here in Indonesian classrooms. And rather than starting with assessments or starting with curriculum that are designed by the elders, those disconnected from the youth, we want to start with the youth themselves and see how they can help us understand what's happening. So is that Pa Anjar? Anjar is joining us. Is that our Anjar? Well, welcome Anjar, if you are our Anjar. Perfect timing if it is him. So about our study, we had this very broad research question. We wanted to know what they were doing, and we kept it very open-ended and tried not to come in with assumptions. And we did this exploratory case study using mixed methods, We wanted to build our own collective knowledge with the how, when, where, by what means, and for what of their own purposes did young people engage with ICTs? Why are they using technology? And here I'm sharing with you some snapshots of what research looked like for us, in as much as I can, because we have to protect the identity of our participants. But this is what it looked like. It was Bupuji and I, or Anjar and I, going to classrooms and explaining to the youth that their voices mattered, and explaining to them what we wanted to learn from them and inviting them to share. And they did so by dutifully filling out surveys for us. We visited 3 SMP schools and 4 SMA schools for a total of 618 participants. There's a brief, you can see Anjar there up at the front helping me manage all of the data collection in this site. And these young people completed their surveys, and from them, we learned that 600 of them had their own mobile phone, their own hand phone. I learned what a hape was. And 530 of them had access to those phones while they were at school. And as we wanted to understand what their perspectives were, we started first with a focus group discussion. And here's one way in which we tried to honor the local. So I couldn't be the US-based researcher who came to Semarang with my own survey already ready to go, because I didn't have enough information about the youth of Semarang. So Bupuji arranged for a small focus group discussion in which we got to talk with 4 young people and ask questions. That's when I learned what TikTok was. I didn't know what TikTok was until those 4 young people told me what it was that September. And we also had a survey from another international researcher from down in Oceania. I can't remember right now if she's in, I think she might be in Australia, but it could also be New Zealand. And she did work with Southeast Asian youth. So we kind of started with her survey, but then had the conversation with the young people to develop our own open and closed survey questionnaire. Though we had it available for them to complete online, every school we went to opted to complete paper tests. That was more comfortable for them, apparently, which meant that Anjar entered in all of the data for us into our system. So we're very grateful for his support. But the surveys could only tell us so much. And so then we returned and had a small focus group discussion with anywhere from 4 to 6 participants from each of the 7 schools. They had all taken the survey and volunteered to continue talking to us. And Bupuji and I met with each group and recorded conversations, and then Anjar transcribed those for us. We have been engaging in a process called abductive analysis. And I would show you my book, but I left it with Bupuji when I was in Indonesia. But it was a very influential book, and a friend had given it to me. And here's another story for you about the connections to Indonesia that I didn't know my work would have before it had it. So a friend told me about this book 2 years prior to coming to Indonesia. And I didn't really have time to read it. You know how academics are. We don't always read all of the books that are on our shelves, right? And I didn't really have time to read it, but the way he described it, I thought that I think is going to help for the Indonesian work. So I grabbed the book off the shelf, and you know how we do. We just kind of scan through little parts of it, right? And you look for what you need, but you didn't get the chance to read the whole thing. So I used it to design my application for Fulbright, but didn't read the whole thing. And I brought the book with me. And I took a break from the initial culture shock of coming to Indonesia. And at the end of September, I went to Bali on my way to Australia. And I went to a pool in Bali and opened up the book to page 1 and finally said I was going to start reading. And one of the first quotes in the book on page 1 is from Geertz, all about his Balinese research. And I thought, of course, I'm in Bali reading about Balinese research with this book, that this is the connection I was looking for. And so what Tavery and Timmermans describe with abductive analysis is that you begin with whatever surprises you in the data. What comes up as like a, ooh, that was kind of fun, or that I didn't expect that. And so that these unanticipated and surprising observations become strategic, because unlike grounded theory that says that we start with a blank slate, or unlike coding that has a code book already, a priori codes that you go into in advance. Instead, what abductive analysis is it helps researchers develop this strategic sense where they know that they have these theoretically sensitized concepts and they recognize potential in data or in moments, right? Because they know it will relate to the broader inquiry group, the community of inquiry. So it's a way that I could come to Indonesia and come to the research and keep these new literacies theories up here, right? But stay open until I recognized it. And so then what Tavery and Timmermans describe is a very creative research analysis process where you kind of go back and forth with defamiliarizing, but then also theorizing, and you trace these chains through your data. It's been so fun, so fun. I did read the whole book, and then I got an ebook version of it and took all of my copying. One day we were, Puji's husband Tegu was driving us to Malang, I think was where we were going. We were going to a wedding in Malang near Christmas time. And I spent the whole time taking all of my copies and putting my notes into the ebook version so that I could gift the book to Puji for her own research. So here's what we think from some of the analysis from our data of that research with the Indonesian youth. Most importantly, what I think Puji and I would like to do, and this was part of the conversation we were having before this event officially started, is that we want to call for a new understanding of digital literacy in Indonesia and how that might impact education. And we do so because we are listening to your youth. We are listening to those 618 participants. So when we talk to them, when our survey asked them what they learn, specifically in their Informatica classes or their ICT classes, their I've seen it also TEK. Young people that we surveyed say that they use technology in school mostly for assessment, right? And now, mind you, we conducted this research back in December of 2019 through February of 2020, right before coronavirus, right? Right before the pandemic, right before everything went online, right? But at that time, the youth told us, yes, we can use our HP, but mainly what we use it for is we answer questions on a Google form and we turn in these assessments. And we also heard from one of the gurus that she liked using Google Forms for assessment because it made her life easier, right? So there was this ease of assessment practice. They told us that they learn about theory So they told us hardware, software, and brainware is what they learned about in this class. So they learn, about how computers function and what parts they have, and they learn about Microsoft Office programs. And also more than half of them said that they didn't currently have an Informatica class, which was a surprise to Pooji, who was thinking that it might be more required, more compulsory across the schools. Then we asked them what they want to learn. This is what they want to know in that class. This is what they want their educators to help them learn. They want to code. They want to make things. They want to create. They know that video production, that making games, making websites, doing this kind of editing work to be able to put themselves out there into the internet where they know connection is happening. They want to know how to do that. And that's not what they're learning. We see that what they are learning and the way that digital literacy is thought of, it's more consumptive, it's functional, and it's very narrow. And what the youth want from you, what they want from us, is more productive, more empowering, and more expansive, right? They want these global meaning-making connections. In Indonesia, even with the new Minister of Culture and Education, so this is one of the infographics that came out for the kind of the reboot of the national literacy curriculum, right? And this came out in late January while I was there in 2020. So it's about a year old. And you can see that literacy is being framed as like this overwhelming information, unstoppable information, and the youth need to know how to sort it and deal with it. There's nothing in here talking about the youth making their own literacies and sharing it, right? Another key component of the digital literacy narrative in Indonesia is hoax. And I didn't talk about it tonight, but another, an article that Bupuji and I are working on with some of our research assistants is all about the hoax data that came up. We never asked students about hoax specifically, but in more than 20% of our respondents mentioned hoax as something that is concerning to them. So we had conversations with all of our high school focus groups about that. And lastly, another strong aspect of the Indonesian narrative about technology is worries about addiction. And I'm not saying, to be clear, that we shouldn't instruct students about how to sort information and deal with it, or that we shouldn't pay attention and teach them about dealing with hoaxes and anti-hoax, or that we should not alert them to the potential for getting disconnected from others and sucked into a device. What I am saying is that if this is only the narrative, if this is what is the driving force for the kinds of instruction that they're getting, then that is not meeting their expectations, and it's not framed in a new literacy's global meaning-making perspective. Students recognize this narrative. They know, they have internalized it, right? So they share to us when we ask them what they liked least. They mentioned hoax data. They mentioned the addictiveness and that people sometimes lose track of time. They talk to us about the dangers of going to a family gathering and everybody is like this, right? Instead of connecting with each other. And when we specifically ask them what they want to learn in their computer class versus the next bit of data that I'll share with you, look at how well Indonesian youth, they're very compliant young people. They are well educated for compliance and for keeping the guru in the front of the room on the stage, right? And in respect, that they say they want to just learn some of these things. I want to learn what my teacher ordered. But when we ask them more broadly what they wish they knew about technology, when we don't tie that to school, that's when we got those responses like coding. And we also get from them how to develop technology to be bigger and find new technologies that can help life in the world, but do not harm humans. What a beautiful way to think about how to use technology. They want to solve the problems. They've been stuck in traffic too, right? They want to know how to use technology to improve transportation. And they want to know how technology can increase someone's talents or ability. These are global meaning-making responses, right? These are agentic responses that work in collaboration with the social context there. This last one, I want to share with you now 2 snapshots from our participants. And these youth, Dixie and Salsa, they are Indonesian youth who enact agentic digital literacies. They actively, thoughtfully, and playfully make meaning. So these 2 stand out in our data. There are more, but I'll just share these 2 as global meaning makers. So first we have Dixie. When I told you that we followed surprises, yeah, Dixie was a surprise when we asked her focus group when they had their phone, how long they've had it, how they got it. Dixie's response came to us as a surprise when she said that she bought her first phone in 6th grade with profits. Profits? What do you mean, Dixie? Well, Dixie was an entrepreneur. Dixie had a thriving digital business. Dixie was a skincare and cosmetics salesperson. She collaborated with a multi-level marketing company in Sweden. She used WhatsApp. She shared her WhatsApp statuses were often product information. So her teachers were some of her clients. And Dixie studied the YouTube channels about makeup, cosmetics, skincare. And when she explained to us why she did that, it was so that she could make the best recommendations to her clients and they would keep coming back to her. She followed the corporate website and the blog so that she knew about the information. She's very much an entrepreneur. Dixie was also very much a teenager, right? And so Dixie is not one-sided. Her friends in the focus group called her the queen of TikTok, right? So she is very much grade 11 fun. And she used TikTok for entertainment, for dance parties, having fun with her friends. What I love about Dixie's honesty with us is as we were talking to the youth in this focus group about how they prevent their own addiction behaviors, how they deal with potential overuse of social media.
Udah, tinggal spin.
Oh, we have somebody not muted. Hi. And what Dixie shared with us is she only stops her social media when she runs out of data. That's what stops her, right? Dixie had connections globally. She had friends that she had made not through her business, but through TikTok and through playing there. Friends in Russia and Spain with whom she spoke not her native tongue, but she spoke another common language, English, with them. So Dixie is very much a global meaning maker in a variety of senses that align with the way Tierney describes them. And then the last one I'll share with you is Salsa. Salsa was very intentional about how she connected. Salsa also stood out to us for how soon she had a phone. So though she was in high school when we talked to her, she had had a phone since she was in kindergarten. The earliest the participant of ours who had a phone the earliest. And she told us that the way that she got her phone was she had gone to a family reunion and her older siblings and cousins were all playing on it and she wanted one too. So her siblings said, ask. She did, and she got one. So it wasn't initially connected to the internet, but she had it. And interestingly about Salsa's responses is Salsa, the reason why I refer to her as intentional is that she very much recognized the affordances of different platforms. So as we were talking about what they use YouTube for, what they use Instagram for, what they use WhatsApp for, she shared with a friend who they knew to be a fan of cooking, and she was saying to her, oh, no, you shouldn't go to IG for that. You need to go to YouTube because there are much more helpful tutorials there, right? She herself did a lot of interest-driven information seeking and learning in tutorials around handicrafts. She used WhatsApp a lot to connect with her classmates so that doing homework wasn't such a lonely thing, and that if she needed help, she could easily reach out. And it was from Salsa that we heard that we need to know how to utilize technology, how we control it, because if we don't know that, it will mislead us. So she was very aware of the potential to be led astray by technology. Salsa also has a very common story of youth in that she was bullied online, and we know this to be a problem around the globe for some youth. So in elementary school, when she posted videos of her own singing, somebody shared hurtful comments back to her. And friends who she thought were better at singing said things that were harsh, and she became not brave. But much like Kartini and some of what Bupuji shared with us, Salsa knew that it was helpful to correspond with those who would nourish her own mind. And for her, that came from a friend in Pakistan, somebody she had connected with around her singing and her interests through WhatsApp. And when she would share things in her creations with her Pakistani friend, she would get more supportive feedback. And she said, in my opinion, people from other countries tend to be more respectful as well as giving open-minded suggestion. Like whatever my mistake is, she could give me some push and support me in a way that was very calming. So instead of being bullied, she was supported. And so I close there and thank you all, terima kasih, reminding you all to please connect and that I look forward to our conversations. I haven't been able to see the chat during all of this, but I look forward to now catching up.
Wow. Jane, it was like, I think your work with Dr. Puji would give a contribution, yeah, to understand how our younger generation, young people, making meaning with using digital literacy or in digital space. I'm sure this would. Do you have any idea when this work will be published?
Well, some of it is available in the article that I shared in the chat.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's some description there.
A snippet, yeah.
Yeah.
It will be very interesting to have. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that is one. We are hoping to finish the next article and get it submitted in the coming weeks. And we have more data and more to share. Yeah.
Yeah,
a lot.
that's great. It's an empirical study that we have evidence how youngsters making meaning in digital space, and then sometimes not being acknowledged, in the classroom. That's the thing. We've been talking in the chat room and also in our private communication that in fact, also it's confirmed in your research that digital literacy or ICT in Indonesia sometimes understood as something more like a dangerous or threat. So always something to do with addiction, something, we have to prevent students from spending so much time using the gadget and stuff instead of, to be able to understand how they're making meaning with using that kind of platform or tools. So that's one presentation. We still have another one, another stellar presenter, Ibu Zulfa Sakia. I'm gonna read you her profile. And by the way, Jane, are you able to stay on? Because otherwise,
Yes.
Okay.
Even though it's dark, I will stay on.
Okay, I see. Thank you. Because I know it's getting late over there, and then we are not supposed to finish until 10 o'clock or something, and then we are supposed to finish by 11. So I'm gonna continue on with the third presenter, that is Dr. Zakia Sulfa. I'm gonna share you the bio. This is her bio. Okay, our third presenter is Dr. Zulfa Sakia, PhD. She's a lecturer and head of the Laboratory Faculty of Language and Arts. UNNES is a wonderful place for studying literacy. It's a hub and also a center. So it's wonderful. Educational background, Dr. Zulfa Sakia is a Master of TESOL from La Trobe University, from Australia, and PhD in Education from the University of Auckland, that is in New Zealand. Her research interests focus on discourse analysis, gender study, and literacy. Dr. Zulfa Sakia is also a prolific researcher. She's done a number of publications. Please follow or check on our Google Scholars. So you will see tons of interesting research that's been published by her. So without further ado, Dr. Zulfa Sakia, please, the time is yours. I'm going to stop sharing my slide.
Thank you, Dr. Tati, for the very generous introduction. I'd like to screen share. My voice is, am I audible?
Yes, doctor.
Yes, Bu Zulfa.
Kelihatan ya ininya?
Sangat kelihatan, Bu.
Ya, oke.
Tinggal digedein menjadi slideshow kali ya.
Oh, slideshow, oke.
Bawah sebelah kanan, ya.
Wait.
Ya, itu dia di bawah tadi.
Okay. Thank you so much. Bu Puji tadi di awal merasa beliau masih newbie ya. So well, I would call myself as a rookie in this very in this stellar club of new literacy studies. And at this occasion, I'd like to firstly acknowledge the generous and continued support of Dr. Jane Lemmers to us, the literacy studies community. And it is through many conversations with her and Dr. Puji that we have our first literacy research center established in UNNES early last year. Well, that's before the pandemic. But now, hey, here we are in a broader scholarly community of new literacy studies. So thank you so much, Jane, for your support. And we have learned from Dr. Puji's presentation on the importance of local values in constructing one's global identity. And the symbol for that is Kartini. I'm going back to that. And we also have learned from Dr. Jane's presentation that the digital literacy practices of Indonesian students are surprising. My presentation will try to connect the dots, exploring the possible rationalities behind this, of why the digital literacy practices of Indonesian students are surprising. So to that, before that, I just want to hear your quick thoughts about this. I want you to get your device. You can use your laptop or your phone actually, and please browse menti.com and insert 7227 1273. I just want to know your response to this, so we are more interactive. Browse menti.com and then insert 7227 7227 1273. Jadi tadi temuan dari risetnya Dr. Jane dan Dr. Puji, mengapa ternyata praktek dari literasi digital siswa Indonesia itu ternyata di luar dari apa ya, sesuatu yang kita bayangkan gitu. Jadi it's beyond our expectation that they are doing really well in that. So I want to know your quick thoughts about this. So I'll stop sharing and I will share another. Wait, go to Menti. Have you found menti.com? And
Yes, Bu Sulfa.
yes, oh yeah, something is coming. So I will screen share. Where is it? Wait, this one, Menti. Yeah. Okay, so you've got 3. Why are the question is, why are the digital literacy practices of Indonesian students surprising? Kenapa ternyata praktek-praktek siswa kita itu sudah jauh dari apa yang ditetapkan oleh kurikulum, gitu ya. And this is really fascinating. That's why I want to hear your quick thoughts about this. One of you said that they are, oh, maybe 2. The big one here, because they are the digital native. Yeah, digital native as a keyword is repeated twice. Because maybe so far we focused on adults' point of view only, okay, because they are humorous or we are humorous. Not sure with this, because this issue is under research. Well, yes, that's one possibility, because digital literacy is empowering. Maybe that's what you mean by that word empowering. Creative now is located in the center, that our students are creative. Okay, I like that spirit. And next is because of critical thinking. So maybe the Indonesian students have sufficient critical thinking to do that. Not surprised? Okay, so one person is not surprised about what's going on, about the finding. So maybe you have that kind of hunch before. Oh, and this is interesting because of the boring curriculum, because the curriculum is boring. So students have other kinds of exploratory work, and that is digital literacy. Okay, that's a very nice interpretation. And sering menggunakan sosmed. Okay, that's digital native. The definition of digital native. And imagination, okay, sama dengan kreativitas ya, hampir-hampir sama lah ya. And ignorance, okay, not sure with ignorance. Maybe our ignorance on the digital literacy practices of our students, the way I interpret it, because of digital life, okay, sama dengan tadi, digital native, digital life. They are active to know it. Okay, that's digital native. Their stories are not heard. Okay, ini tadi berarti sama dengan that this area of research is under research. So yeah, you share similar hunch, similar opinions on this. Learn better from outside. Maybe outside the classroom or outside the schooling system. So students learn better outside the educational system. Maybe that's what you mean. And exciting, because it's surprising, that's why it's exciting. Okay. Ini yang humorous ini masih belum paham sih saya. Maybe one of you who wrote this down would like to explain what humorous means. I cannot interpret that. Fresh, okay, maybe it's a fresh interpretation, or it's a fresh research findings, or it's a fresh, well, youngsters, the youth, they are fresh generation, so their practices in digital literacies are fresh, maybe. Yeah, so 20 of you have contributed your thoughts, and you have put your thoughts out here, so thank you so much. I'll stop sharing, and I'll get back to the screen. Yeah. Okay. Right. So thank you for showcasing your thoughts. And yes, I would say yes, and agree to most of your reasoning on the digital literacy practices of our students, of our youngsters. Some of you said that it's because this area is under research, so whatever comes out, then it's surprising. That's one. And two, it's because they are all digital native, so they have more flexibilities, and they have the the digital skills to explore the social media. And you said that they put their time most in the social media, so that's why they become very competent in that, and so on. Yes, I do agree. But the thing is that my presentation will take a different perspective. And please don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of digital technology and digital literacy, but I think it's important to look back and see what has made us this far in this constantly digital world. So I will, based on my presentation today from this, it's not published yet, it's in press. But I suppose what I'm going to present is also within Kartini's spirit, to connect the dot with Dr. Puji's presentation, the spirit of understanding our own local identities and local values in order to be able to contribute into a global conversation. And I personally see these surprising digital literacy practices as a result of a long negotiation between the contested notion of literacy as it is practiced in Indonesia and maybe elsewhere, I presume. So the contested notion of literacy, it is one defined by the government. Some of you said because the curriculum is boring, so maybe that's one aspect here. And another notion of literacies, of critical literacies, I would say, as negotiated by the grassroots literacy communities. So therefore, my presentation will map out the notion of literacy in Indonesia, and it is based on this book chapter edited by Professor Jessica Pandya. It has undergone 2 rounds of review. Hopefully it's quite nerve-wracking, so it's hopefully it's enough, and we are expecting a minor revision on this. So in the paper, we take a look at the contested notion of literacy in the context of post-authoritarian Indonesia, and distinguish literacy into 2. The formal literacy that is uniform and autonomous as it is practiced in the schooling system, and critical literacies that are socially practiced by the grassroots communities. Ini sebenarnya saya akan mengoverview dari narasumber sebelumnya ya, Bu Pratiwi, Bu Sofi, Mas Lukman di sesi Bincang Literasi sebelumnya. But anyway, let's discuss this further. So yeah, this is the picture of formal literacy model. It assumes an autonomous model of literacy located in formal schooling, and it is organized formally by the government. And if we look at the authoritarian regime, the New Order government, literacy was defined as the ability to read and write, in this case in Bahasa Indonesia script only. So despite the rise of the literacy rate those days, which has reached up to 92%, Indonesia remains the lowest among 61 countries surveyed on reading interests. Even UNESCO further recorded that only 0.00001% of our total population had reading interests. But then there is a gap here because, and in the one hand, we have made an achievement in the local or in the national level. We have claimed the achievement here. But then on the other hand, in the international level or in the global level, we're not. What's wrong? So if we compare this to statistical data and the two projection of ourselves, further questions remain. Kita salah ya melihat diri kita sendiri gitu, atau sebenarnya apa yang terjadi gitu ya? Kok ada dua proyeksi tentang Indonesia, tentang literasi Indonesia yang berbeda? Some authors like Mas Lukman Solihin argues that it's because we look at PISA as a myth, and that our Indonesian students they have this poor performance in PISA because we believe the myth, gitu ya. But I would like to take a different interpretation of this, this conundrum actually resonates Dr. Jane and Dr. Puji's surprising findings on the digital literacy practices of our students. What I mean is that the findings highlight the inadequacy of formal literacy to approach the issue. So if we look at the history a bit, during the New Order administration that is authoritarian, the improvements in the literacy rate was measured only by the standardized assessment and enrollment rate in primary schooling, in which, of course, we could question all the data here. Enrollment rate doesn't necessarily correspond with literacy, right? It's just mere assumption. But what happened in the wider socio-political context during the New Order government is that critical thinking and freedom of expression was suppressed by the regime. So for example, in Barbara Lee's dissertation in 1999, she observes that schooling in Indonesia doesn't always mean learning. And in the same vein, reading doesn't mean understanding nor thinking. This is my conclusion, by the way. I know it's too abrupt, but then if Barbara Lee has had the courage to argue that, so maybe this is true. So the role of literacy in cultivating critical thinking to enable active participation both in local and global democratic society was undermined. And education, if we look at education as alat ideologis gitu ya, as an apparatus or as a tool of the ideological state, then it aimed to curb critical thinking. Jadi justru malah berpikir kritisnya ditekan gitu. So data for this is many. So for example, texts and textbooks that deem left wing were banned and burned. Ya misalnya novel tetraloginya Pram begitu ya. They are burned, they are banned. And critical engagement with these texts as a form of critical literacy practices was forbidden and disbanded. Diskusi-diskusi mengenai buku-buku yang kritis juga nggak boleh gitu. So when the collapse of the New Order government, this moment saw a flourish of reading gardens atau taman bacaan masyarakat TBM di Indonesia. And until today, if we look at the website of the Ministry of Education and Culture, then the numbers really amazing, maybe more than 5,400 TBM. And they share the spirit of what Bu Sofi's research and Bu Prativi's research. In their research, Bu Sofi captures in her research about the street children in Bandung through TBM, or Bu Prativi, who advocates the Indonesian foreign domestic workers in Hong Kong, that they are also literate and they are active in that. So here on the right side, my right, your right, in the right side is Bu Sofi and the right side is Bu Pratiwi. That's my right and my left, okay? But then here, I'm not going into detail of this. We have heard about it in the previous Bincang Literasi, but then what I want to highlight is that critical literacy practices have the power not only to make the unheard voices, for example, from Dr. Jane and Dr. Astuti's research, that the stories of our students are unheard about their digital literacy practices, the stories of ini ya TKW di Hong Kong is also unheard. The stories of anak jalanan di Bandung is also remained unheard. So this is the importance of critical literacy practices, that it enables oneself to reconstruct their own identity and also empower their respective community. So it's the whole community, not only oneself at the end of the day. So this shared spirit in advocating literacy as a social practice is what characterizes as critical literacies. Why critical literacies? Well, it's the title of the Routledge handbook. No, that may be, but well, some authors like Kress would argue that, well, there is no need to make literacy plural because plurality is the fundamental characteristic of language, right? And the view that there is only one kind of literacy, which is uniform, and of course also in terms of nature and the products or the outcomes. But literacy as social practices that happens in the grassroots level, they are varied and they are really rich, and therefore I think we need to mention them as literacies rather than literacy as a uniform being. Mas Lukman Solihin, our speaker in Bincang Literasi Dua, even believes that reading garden is a social movement. So this is what characterizes critical literacies. Literacy as a social practices practiced by those in the community, that it is bottom up, it is initiated by the community themselves. It's voluntary and it's self-funded. Well, sometimes they may or they may not receive any funding from the government or from the private sector, but they are non-profit oriented. So they are based on the ideals to help and to serve others to improve their literacy. So they see themselves as a social movement. So this activism is really important. And within the communities, they discuss ideas, and not only through reading, but also in Mas Lukman Solihin's findings, that they organize their ideas into writing. So not only reading, but also writing. So this kind of literacy is more meaningful, more empowering, and liberating from the excesses of authoritarianism in the previous decades. And we present two TBM here to illustrate our point. The first is Rumah Buku Cilegon. Mungkin yang di sini ada yang tahu ya. or Cilegon Book House. It was established in 2011. The owner of this, or the one who established this, we interviewed him and said that it's born out of a deep concern over the low reading interest and poor condition of city libraries in Cilegon. Cilegon itu kan kota industri ya di Jawa Barat, and there is a very rising economic inequality of the people in there. So this desire that brings together people or literacy activists, I would say, with shared passions about books. And the community, initially, they organized book picnics around Cilegon and the surrounding cities. But then, and they, after that, they have this mobile library, and they commute from one place to another around Cilegon, familiarizing the locals with high quality books to lay the very foundation of literacy in the local community. So it is this kind of meaningful practices that give impact towards the community. And also later they have this very fascinating program called Mencuri Ilmu dari Buku. So they steal knowledge from the books. Well, they're not like stealing, but they just got knowledge from the book. So unlike formal schooling in Indonesia, which is stereotypically, I would say, passive and makes children subservient to the learning process, this kind of community encourage freedom of speech and as well as critical thinking, that everyone has the same rights and the same opportunities to speak up their mind. And the second community is, or the second TBM is Adam and the Sun. It was also a community library, Reading Gardens, initiated by the grassroots community in Banten in 2009. But then in 2011, it moved to Bandung. It focused on science and like literacy. And they have this campaign about the non-dichotomy of science and religion by using critical thinking to even deepen the faith. So their programs are, for example, Galileo Junior, the Galileo as the scientist, to visualize astronomy through video. The Dream Trigger, to motivate children to dream higher. Verse of Universe, it's about music. And they also have this local music. They collaborate with local musicians, pengamen yang keren gitu ya, to create minor notes of also using local instruments or Sundanese instruments. They also urge the Banten local government to build a planetarium, and that project is called Space for Space. And Adam and Son also, they come into the formal schooling. They promote Science Day and astronomy for elementary school students. So these works of TBM, Taman Baca Masyarakat activists and practitioners at the community level really embodies and illustrates the critical literacies and show that although they are often not in the center, they are marginalized by the discourse of formal literacy, critical literacies really play important roles in making sense of the world through words, as Freire said. And I think this Freire spirit is also within the spirit of Kartini. And I think here what she means by gadis is not only young women, but also the youth, because youth are vulnerable. And I believe that gender studies is not only protecting women, but also protecting the vulnerable. So those youth who are open to their mind, who have opened their horizons, they cannot live within what imprisoned them. Jadi tidak sanggup hidup di dunia nenek moyang yang kadang memenjarakannya. Begitu. So thank you so much. That's a bit about my research. I look forward to your discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu, as usual. This very nice presentation, Bu Zulfa Sakia. And we are excited to see your publication on that particular topic. It seems very interesting, and we would like to learn more about that in a complete chapter. I think before I begin the Q&A session, maybe one of the things that I would like, as a moderator, I have a privilege. I would like to raise a question for all of you here with regard to the digital literacy exploration, perhaps, or research in terms of how we are able, or how we can enable those who are less fortunate or in minority groups. I have been reading some research about digital literacy practices in a classroom for inclusive education. For instance, I've been reading Dr. Price Dennis' research, how she had some explorative research about the using of digital tools so that special ed student can participate. I think this is also relevant, the question, because in many of our meetings, we have been getting a lot of questions about special education and literacy. And then we are struggles because not all of us equipped with knowledge and expertise. So this will be a good opportunity to maybe address that question about digital literacy and inclusive education or minority groups. Would you be able to check up the question? Maybe who's going to start?
So I'm also familiar with Dr. Price Dennis's work.
Okay, nice. Okay, can you?
And so I just wondered, what question do you have about digital literacy and inclusivity?
Some of the questions that we have, in our forums, a lot of questions raised about, we are working with special ed students, and then how do you think literacy can be integrated or can be, infused in their teaching, because literacy is a new concept in classroom right now. So it is something that needs to be more concrete for them, so that special education is not left behind in the discussion of literacy education. Since we are talking about digital literacy, do you have some of the insight about, in connection with special ed or inclusive education, maybe something that you are more familiar with?
Yeah, one of the things that I think kind of a global meaning-making perspective offers us is a recognition that it's unfortunately hard to answer your question, because we recognize that all in a group are not the same, right? And so a label of special education or a label of difference doesn't tell us a lot in some ways about how best to meet needs. But what I think digital literacy affords, whether it's in a special education context or not, is there's a lot of ways to differentiate. And again, if we go back to the global meaning maker perspective and this notion of agency, so while some young people's abilities, their neurodiversity might mean that they can participate at a different level, technology makes it possible to center them and let them create whatever it is they can, right? And I think that if we think of all of the youth as agentic, that, some may appreciate more visual, some may be able to record verbal, some may, be able to create their own website and put in videos and link to these. So we get this whole range. And what I think the global meaning maker perspective helps remind us is that if we center the youth as having agency to work with literacy, that the tools, the technology might facilitate a variety of different ways for them to engage, that it doesn't all have to be the same. That's one of the things that your question makes me think.
Yeah, I think maybe our mindset about this learner itself, yeah, perhaps they are becoming more agentic. That's how we can transform our teaching regardless of who our students are, I think, in my point of view.
And that's a really hard thing for gurus to accept. Yes. One of the things that I noticed when I was in Indonesia is, so we have this phrase that we think of education and the teachers as being the sage on the stage, right? The smart person on the stage. And we often, if we're trying to think about communities of learners and that notion from Rogoff, we want teachers to be more guides on the side, right?
Yeah.
But in Indonesia, in the classrooms that we visited, it is very literally a sage on the stage. Like there's a step up that they stand on, right? At the front of the room. So it's a big culture shift to have this new literacies perspective.
Okay, sounds, yeah. Thank you, Dr. Jane. We have a number of questions, and also maybe Bu Zulfa atau Bu Puji, we would like to add some more without that first question from me.
I don't have any.
We have a lot of questions though, so don't worry. You would have your question.
Add a little bit, yeah. It's really interesting to, what is it? The attempt to decenter technology in the literacy practices, in the digital literacy practices. And I guess it brings nuances into the debate about the role and, the role of technology or the role of technology in literacy. So that's why it's called digital literacy. But then I guess another issue that is as well important is the technology itself is the cause of social inequalities. I mean, in Indonesia, we have this inequities and inequalities in accessing technology. Well, not only the hardware, but also the software. I mean, not only the infrastructure, but access to it is also, there is an inequality in that. So I guess that's the fascinating nuance that I think is fertile to explore in this area. Thank you.
Inequality is still an issue, regardless whether or not literacy or digital literacy, there is still an issue. Yeah. I have invited Bu Arum. She's a practitioner. She works with early childhood education or primary level. I would like Bu Arum to reflect a bit about her practices and perhaps would like to raise some question if you would like to, but we would like to hear more from practitioners here. Bu Arum, silakan.
Hi, thank you, Bu Tati, and good morning to all of the speakers. I have many great notes from all of the speakers, especially the one with Kartini's literacy practice as a global meaning maker. This is very insightful, and I would like to try on to continue this practice on my students. I'm from Sekolah Kembang. I'm teaching primary level, and what I've been reflected also from our discussion about how we use technology, how we introduce technology to our students. This pandemic, this school from home era, 1 year school from home, is not only as a learning curve for students, but also for us teachers, how to switch all of our previous practices, previous knowledge in teaching. We have to unlearn and to make something new, very new, like switch them onto online, onto digital. How we communicate, how we teach, how we give instruction, everything is on digital. But as for students, we the teachers see that they are also develop their own knowledge. Like they are very quick in learning Google Slides, Google Docs. So that's what we use in our everyday practices. So we only need like a month to introduce those technologies to them, and they're developing them themselves. They make their own folders, they are sharing with us teachers, and then we also give them options in how to submit their assignments. They can use Microsoft Word, they can use Canva, making digital poster. And we see a very interesting learning curve, a very, very fast. And sometimes we also discuss together on how what kind of platform do we like to use on this subject. So we use Mentimeter also. We use Padlet. So it's also we are learning together with the students. And so for our exam, for 6th grade exam, they're making a small research based on based on their interest, and they're presenting to us in Zoom like this, in Microsoft PowerPoint, on slides. And the process is very much themselves. They reach to us, teacher. We make a coaching clinic to like a very simple form of thesis. So they make a research, they discuss with us, and they practice their presentation, and so on. So I think what we can give as a teacher to students is a great chance in them to explore themselves more. We take them as a partner, not only from a superior to students. That's all. Thank you, Bu Tati.
Thank you, Bu Arum, for your reflection. Maybe Jane, Bu Puji, and then Bu Zulfa has some comments on that. The reflection.
I do.
Yeah, so Bu Puji. Now your turn.
Okay. Thank you, Bu Sekar Ayu, for sharing with us the literacy practices that your students do together with you. I think important in the process is for students to reflect, to do reflection on their learning process in which technology is integrated or part of their learning. I think we need to help them to reflect on how technology propels their learning, how technology helps them to achieve the learning objectives. Yeah. So I think that's important and need to be integrated in the process.
Yes,
the reflection piece.
Yeah, thank you, Bu Puji.
Jane or Bu Zulfa, perhaps want to comment on that?
I'm really appreciative on Bu Sekar's practices in teaching and the integration of technology to enable the students to be able to access and to excel in their digital literacy skills. So, 2 thumbs.
Thank you, Bu Zulfa.
Jane, anything else you want to say?
I wanted to give you an opportunity to share, as you mentioned that you were taking lots of notes on the Cartini as a global meaning maker.
Yeah.
Which is just such an intriguing framework that Puji has been reflecting on and playing with lately. What stood out to you as particularly useful?
All of the example of Kartini's literacy practice as a global meaning maker, honoring the local, promoting reciprocity between local and global, and so on. It's just a reminder for me also as a highlight too, on how we can take notes from the practice also, and as a reminder, not just reminding Kartini as a because in Indonesian sometimes if we celebrate Kartini Day, we only stop in wearing traditional costumes only. I think there's more than that, very much more on that, especially in her literacy and in her reading and writing activities. So I think as a teacher, maybe I would like to take my students to get this side of Kartini. It's not only what's the common knowledge we've already known before, but this side, this literacy side of her, that we should see her as a role model in writing, in literacy, in teaching, even in reading, how we can question ourselves after reading. Something like that, Jane.
Right, and you know, you have what, 5 days? Like, it's next week, right?
Yeah.
So,
sorry, Jane. This is just so intriguing. So you are teaching primary level. So what grade level you are teaching about Kartini in that regard?
I'm currently teaching second grade, but actually we haven't had our solid plan for celebrating Kartini's Day yet. But we have our own program. We have Radio Kembang. Radio Kembang is basically a radio program. And the topic is about Kartini, but the audience is more focused on kindergarten students, and we'd like to take the theme is Indonesia. So because for kindergarten students, I think it's still too far if we take the literacy side of Kartini. So we took the Indonesian theme. We take them to several places in Indonesia, like what is the main attraction, or the places, or the food. So the main goal is to focusing on how to feeling proud of being Indonesian, of being a country that have many great food, great everything, great culture. I think it's about that too for kindergarten students.
Thank you so much.
I put in the chat a video for you that one of my students shared. I have an Indonesian student in one of my literacy courses right now, and she is designing. She's from, I think she's from Maluku, and she's designing a unit on Kartini and literacy for our course. And she introduced our class to this video about Kartini. Maybe it will be useful to you.
Okay. Wow. Thank you very much.
Also, Bu Tati, may I propose something for
Everyday brain?
Of course.
Grammarly helps you communicate smarter.
Sorry.
One message at a time.
I don't know what happened. Yeah. Okay. For Kartini celebration this year, I am ready with my kebaya because that's my way of appreciating my Japanese culture. And I propose this for everyone, perhaps not suitable for Bu Sekar Ayu. How about asking our students to write a letter to Kartini?
I think
that's my proposal, Bu Tati. Thank you.
Yeah. I've been to Sekolah Kembar actually. I think they've been doing those practices, or sending letters to characters in the book. So I think they will be on the horizon in doing their activities. Wonderful job, Bu.
Thank you.
Bu Arun,
Bu
thank you
Tati,
for the reflection.
DJ,
Yeah,
Ibu
I'm sure a
Bapak,
lot of us learning
Uji.
from that practices. Okay, I have a number of questions in the chat room. I noticed Pak Karya, hold on a second, Karwadi. Yeah, you have a number of questions to the speakers. Why don't you just ask your question in person? Silakan, Pak Karyadi ya. Tadi namanya ada. Are you here? Are you still with us? Karwandi, I'm sorry, Pak Karwandi. Are you still with us, Pak Karwandi? Atau kalau nggak ada, kita nggak perlu jawab. Atau gimana? Pak Karwandi probably, I think he's still on ya, Pak Karwandi. Are you still there? Otherwise saya akan skip ke pertanyaan berikut. Yaitu dari, say it again. Say.
He's frozen. I can see him on the screen, but he looks frozen.
Oh, yeah, that will be your next turn ya, Pak Karwandi. Yeah, he's still there. But yeah, I can see the camera, but like, Bu, apa ini? Oke, yang kedua pertanyaan, Ibu ada Bu Ati ya tadi ya, saya lihat. Ini sudah panjang sekali, jadi saya lost track. Pak Bu Ati, silakan mau tanya. Mungkin singkat dan padat, so we can have plenty of time to discuss more else. Silakan Bu Ati. Bu Ati dari mana, Bu?
Dari Bogor.
Ya, silakan Bu, silakan. Ke siapa pertanyaannya?
Ke Bu Zulfa sih sebetulnya, minta opini saja Bu Zulfa. In some schools, in junior high schools here in Bogor, yeah, there each class provides what's so called by literacy tree. Ada pohon literasi yang banyak cabang, ya, and almost every day students should put the title of the book that they have read. Yeah. Nah, but I don't know. It was nice, but I didn't know whether they discuss or share what they have read or not. Jadi saya melihat gerakan literasi, ya betul ya, siswa diminta untuk membaca, tapi nampaknya belum melakukan literasi yang sesungguhnya, hanya sekedar membaca kemudian menuliskan apa yang dia baca gitu. Nah, I was wondering whether in Semarang it happens too, and what do you think about this? Bagaimana supaya gerakan literasi itu benar-benar gitu lebih dilaksanakan di sekolah dibanding seperti yang tadi taman bacaan malah lebih bergerak menurut saya dibanding di sekolah-sekolah gitu. Nah, so do you have any idea how teachers should provide this literacy movement so that literasi itu benar-benar ya literasi gitu yang sebenarnya. Itu Bu Julfa, terima kasih.
Bu Ati, guru. Bu juga?
Enggak, saya mengajar di Universitas Pakuan.
Oh, jadi mengajar calon guru ya?
Ya, saya sering melihat kalau PPL gitu ada, ya saya masuk ke kelas-kelas ya pasti ada pohon literasi.
Okay, so Ati Herawati Jane, she is a teacher educator. She's teaching future teacher. The question is, we have the national literacy movement, but in a school where we have 15 minutes reading, culture, but then it doesn't seem to growing. It doesn't seem like it stops there. So the question is for everyone here. Any recommendation for teachers? Perhaps Ibu Ati tadi Bu Puji menceritakan bahwa harus passionate juga readernya. Nah, jangan-jangan teachernya nggak passionate. Ini dari saya loh. Silakan yang mau respon. Anybody would like to respond?
Can I respond first? I think Bu Ati mentioned my name.
No, yeah, I'm sorry about that.
No worries. Yeah, Bu Ati, I think she was our active participant in program apa Bu Puji kemarin di Embung itu?
Writing
Virtual
camp.
writing,
Oh yeah,
writing camp.
It was our active participant in writing camp that Jane initiated. So we are all here reunian ya, buka bersama meskipun bukanya masih lama. Yeah, and you're right, Bu Ati. My preliminary observation, I haven't done a more intensive observation about these literacy practices at schools, but my preliminary findings suggest that it's still on the surface. Jadi cuman baca 15 menit, gurunya minta siswanya baca gitu ya, nggak ada monitoring, there is no monitor in the progress of the reading, there is no interaction both with the students as well as with the reading, with the books that they are reading. Even some schools, they don't have any what is it, like checklist or written report whatsoever on what they have reading. It's just they bring the books, any books to school, and they take a picture and send it to parents so that they have they are accountable to the parents. Ini loh, kita sudah melaksanakan 15 menit gerakan membaca gitu. But then now I see a different movement in the ministry, and thanks to the head of Gerakan Literasi Sekolah, Bu Sofi is in charge of that, and also Bu Pratiwi here, that they see that the literacy movement at school is inadequate to grow that reading interest, and that's why they have to work together with Taman Baca Masyarakat, with the literacy gardens, reading gardens, and I think this really reflects the approach of new literacy studies to see that literacy is a social practice. Jadi di sekolah mereka baca, di kampung nggak di kampung ya, di kompleks, di perumahan atau di rumah gitu ya, mereka juga ngobrolin tentang apa yang dibaca dengan temennya, dengan orang tuanya, dan lain sebagainya, dengan lingkungannya. So I think I see a more growing, hopefully we're hoping a better result of this new approach that is initiated by Bu Sofi, Bu Pratiwi, and friends. So
May I go next?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Jane, you will be next. Silakan, Puji, Bu Puji.
Okay, I have not practiced this in my classroom, but I know Jane does. Jane reads a novel to her teacher candidates from the beginning of the semester up to the end. I've always been planning to do that, but I have not. So yeah, teachers reading for students.
Yeah, that's great. Jane?
Yes, and so I often will read poetry or children's books. It's not just novel, but the read aloud research tells us that readers appreciate being read to. So that's one idea. But Bu Ati, the other idea that I have, and I would be very interested in talking more with Bu Sofi and Bu Prapti about their work on the program itself, but an idea that every teacher can do that I don't know if they are, is during that 15 minutes of reading, what is the teacher doing? Is the teacher reading? Or is that when the teacher is looking at her phone? Is that when the teacher is grading? Is that when the teacher leaves the room? No. The teacher needs to have
some are reading, some are leaving, some are just answering the WhatsApp message.
Right.
No. Not inconsistent.
15 minutes. Everybody is reading. Because if it's only a requirement for the students, what message are you sending to them? Right? Look at all these smiles and all these knowing nods of just even the few that have their cameras on. You know what I'm talking about. And we convey to our students what really matters by what we do. So if you're answering WhatsApp messages during the 15 minutes of reading time, they know that 15 minutes of reading time doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Every educator here, every educator listening to this recording later can start doing that on Monday. You don't need any extra training. You don't need any extra workshops. You don't need any extra resources. Bring a book, any book. Cartini's, Letters of a Javanese Princess, yes. You know, Bettina Love's work, We Want to Do More Than Survive, culturally relevant pedagogy, you know, whatever it may be, a novel, a graphic novel, anything but your phone. Don't read your phone. That's my advice.
Okay, thank you. Shall we move on to the next question? Bu Ati, cukup ya?
Cukup, terima kasih. Thank you very much.
Cukup ya, supaya ada waktunya lebih banyak. Ada Pak Muhammad Hoiri yang menurut saya, he has some question di chat room tentang sedang melakukan riset tentang teacher identity in their writings. Mungkin Pak Muhammad Hoiri mau bertanyakan langsung? Karena soal identitas ya.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bu Tati. Well, I think this is not really questions, but this would be, I want to bring up this issue for us, perhaps who are interested in doing research on this. I myself right now is doing research on this, you know, how teachers' writings reflect, you know, the teacher's identity. Sometimes in their writings can be seen how they identify themselves as a teacher, but also some others identify as you know, writer. Right now there is you know, saku satu buku sabu sagu, right? Satu buku, satu buku, ya, satu guru, satu buku. A movement in Indonesia. There are so many teachers are trained here and there, and then they usually are, you know, trained to write books. I myself also trained teachers in you know, in small town to write books talking about you know, their literary narratives, yeah, but related to what actually they want to be you know, concerning their identity. Well, I think this would be interesting if some of us also do the same thing, because you know, it seems very interesting when they see that they say in the writing that, okay, they are very proud of being a writer. Ini yang menarik sekali adalah ternyata ada sampingan yang pengen menjadi penulis. Dan some of them, some groups of a teacher, I call it teacher writers, ini sudah punya sejumlah buku dan betul-betul mereka, they are very eager to identify themselves as writers, yeah, particularly, you know, non-fiction writers, particularly, yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the sharing, Pak Muhammad Khairi. I think he was sharing about the program of teachers as writers, yeah, supported by the Ministry of Education. One of the things that probably was mentioning about the opportunity of having students to write is to investigate their identities or to reflect about their identities. Probably that's my understanding. In keeping with that question, how do you think the identity of teachers can be beneficial for their teaching practices, for us to understand about their identity? Hopefully this is not way beyond our topic. Silakan. Ada yang mau taking up the question?
Well, I think Pupuji's presentation did a really good job of showing what that's like, right? Her own identity work and the the transformation that she's experienced as a global meaning maker. And new literacy's perspectives are not only about the skills, it's the skills for what? The skills to enact what identity and what gets valued and what's meaningful. So I think identity work, whether it be the teacher or anyone, is intimately connected to a new literacy's global meaning making perspective.
And recently I read Barguizen's work on teacher identity construction, and his idea of asking teacher candidates to write narratives, because identities are constructed through narratives and in the narratives.
That's great. Yeah.
So yeah.
Right. Yeah, teacher. And so it is important for us, to investigate or explore about the identities and the teacher's value, because it's also would affect how, in especially because they're in teaching profession, it would influence how they would teach, what values they would expose. Jane, I notice you are tired. No, you're fine. You're not offending us, but I know this is quite late now. It is 11 o'clock. Bu Sophie, Larissa, Bu Sri Sumaryani, do you think we still can carry on, or we need to wrap this discussion?
I think we just wrap it up.
Okay.
I
know
there's so many questions. Yeah.
So many questions. All are important and critical. And again, the spirit is for us to keep it, more practical. So this is useful. So this is like something, ivory tower thing. So this is our spirit. Thank you so much for the wonderful discussion. I know this is while we are having this presentation, while we have this presentation, we have a number of ideas came out, about, why don't we talk about more about legacy of Kartini, and then so many more suggestions for a future talk. So again, thank you for the panelists, stellar panelists. Indeed, they're stellar. Thank you so much for enlightening us, and thank you for Bapak Ibu. This is like a record. We have almost like full book, nearly 100% occupied. So hopefully this is like a spirit to us that this is something very timely and very important for us to discuss. Do you have the last comments perhaps you would like to share with us, all the speakers, before we wrap this up? I think that's nice to conclude your thoughts. Yeah, silakan Bu Puji.
Okay, I strongly believe that Kartini would be proud of Dixie and salsa. Thank you.
Say it again, Bu Puji. I missed that part.
Okay, I strongly believe that Kartini would be very proud of Dixie and salsa.
Wow, I would like to know more about that. Ya, silakan. Kriptik dikit karena kita harus baca nih lebih banyak. Bu Zulfa mungkin, nanti Jane terakhir.
Thank you for the very vibrant discussion, Bapak Ibu sekalian. I'm really honored to be part of this conversation, and with these people on board, I'm pretty optimistic that we will have our literacy better in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for the optimistic ini ya. Silakan Ibu Jane, they will be the last one.
Such an honor to be in conversation with you all and to have the last word. I was intrigued by much of the research and the practices that were shared in the chat. And what I hope comes out of this, as we take inspiration from Kartini and you all go into your classrooms and read with your students and talk more next week about Kartini's history and its connection to literacy. And then going forward, what I hope we take from this is this spirit and an invitation to connect, to be global meaning makers ourselves, to work in collaboration with each other, in ways that bring these sorts of concepts and practices of new literacies into ethical collaboration with your local values and your local programs. And I look forward to future opportunities to work with all of you. It is a sincere invitation. I think Bu Puji, Bu Zilfa, and Bu Ati, even Bu Yuni, if she's still around here, can attest to the sincerity of that invitation. I'm not a bule who stays on my side of the globe and just does my own thing. I really want to connect with and support all of the rich literacy learning and research, and like female empowerment of scholarship and global meaning making. I'm all for it, and I look forward to connecting with you all. Please email questions that didn't get answered, follow on Instagram, and next time I'm in Indonesia, invite me to your institution.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's all very optimistic. Yeah, I'm very full. I'm feeling full today. Before we conclude, I'm gonna turn this over to Larissa. Larissa has some good thing to announce. A door prize. Larissa, silakan Larissa. Atau Bu Sri, saya nggak tahu nih.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Tati. So I take over my previous microphone from you. So we're getting near almost to the end of our session, but then there are several steps that we need to do. The first one is please fill the exit survey that the link will be sent in the chat box. So nanti Bapak dan Ibu sekalian, kami memohon untuk mengisi exit survey yang linknya akan dikirimkan di chat box ya. Kemudian yang kedua adalah it is the time for me on behalf of the committee to announce and also to promote the official account of Kajian Literasi Baru ya. Alright, jadi Kajian Literasi Baru has an official account, so it's apparently an Instagram account, so do not forget to follow the account later on when the session is over. That's the second announcement. And then the third one is later on, 1 month from now, there's going to be the 6th literacy talk, and one of the speakers is Anne Dyson from UIUC. It will be held in June. For further information about the talk, you're gonna get the information from Bu Larissa later on. And then also for the door prize winners, there will be 2 persons that would be announced as the winners with 2 questions, 2 best questions. So I would give the time to Dr. Tati to announce who are the winners for these door prizes.
I have the name, the lucky winner.
2 of them.
Yeah. Do I have the information? I don't have it.
All right. Oh, I've just got from Bu Larissa. Sorry for the miscommunication. The first...
mungkin Ibu Sri aja ya.
All right. So the first person who's got the door prize is Bu Ati, and then the second one is Bu Purbani. All right. So those are the winners. After this, please contact Kajian Literasi Baru 2020@gmail.com to send your personal information regarding the door prizes that we're gonna send to all of you. Jadi nanti setelah acara selesai, mohon untuk mengirimkan data termasuk alamat dan juga nama terang di, saya ulangi lagi ya, Kajian Literasi Baru 2020@gmail.com. Monggo nanti Bu Ati dan Bu Purbani silahkan untuk mengirimkan data. And the last session before I close today's event is, of course, a mandatory picture. So I really encourage all of you participants to turn on the camera. All right, so there's going to be 4 sessions, 4 shots that will be taken by Bu Larissa. I'm going to give, the counting. So 1, 2, 3, take a shot, 1, 2, 3, take a shot 4 times. All right, are you all ready? Baik, Ibu Larissa. 1, 2, 3, first shot.
Next.
All right, 1, 2, 3, second shot. 1, 2, 3, third shot. And then 1, 2, 3, last one. All right, so that means the end of our event today. Thank you very much for all of the participants, moderator, and also speakers. I really appreciate all of the sharing and then also information that you deliver today. And I do believe as well that all of the participants also feel the same. We'll see you around 1 month from now in June with the 6th literary talk. Do not forget to wait for the upcoming information from Bu Larissa. All right, I guess